Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why some things just don't seem to connect, even when they're clearly linked? This new study dives into how we think about big problems like climate change. And it has some really interesting ideas about how we can get people to support solutions, especially when those solutions seem to benefit others more than ourselves. So, we all know climate change is a massive global issue, right? And it is not fair countries that have pumped out the most pollution are often the ones best equipped to handle the impacts, while poorer countries who've contributed the least are getting hit the hardest. To fix this, we need climate justice policies, which often mean richer countries helping out poorer ones. But getting people in wealthy countries to support these policies can be tough. Why would they want to spend money on solutions that don't directly benefit them? This is where researchers Enrico Rubaltelli and Giulia Priolo stepped in. They wanted to understand what psychological factors make people more likely to support climate justice, even when there is no direct personal payoff. They came up with a cool idea called causal connectedness. Think of it like being able to see the ripple effects of climate change. It is not just about rising temperatures, it is about understanding how those rising temperatures can lead to other problems like conflict, migration, and even economic instability, issues that can directly affect us. If you see climate change as a threat multiplier that cascades across different areas of life, you are more likely to see the bigger picture and be willing to support policies that address it, even if they're costly. They also looked at how people's political views and their thinking styles play a role. We know climate change is pretty divided politically, right? Democrats and Republicans often see things very differently. And then there is how people think. Do they tend to deeply analyze situations, or do they go with their gut feelings? The researchers wanted to see if these factors influence support for climate justice. So, how did they test all this? They got 400 people in the US to rate how much they supported different types of climate policies. They looked at adaptation policies, like improving water storage, and mitigation policies, like cutting emissions. But the real focus was on two climate justice policies. One for direct financial compensation to countries hit hardest by climate change, and another for canceling the debt of poorer nations so they have more resources to deal with climate impacts. Then, in a clever experimental twist, about half the participants read a short piece about how climate change is linked to conflicts and migration. The other half didn't. This was to see if highlighting those connections would boost support for climate justice. And guess what? It worked. People who read about the links between climate change, conflict, and migration were more supportive of the climate justice policies. This suggests that framing climate change as something that causes a cascade of other problems is super important for building support. It wasn't just about people intuitively feeling the need. It was about their perception of how interconnected things are. They also found that causal connectedness, that ability to see all the ripple effects, was a big predictor of support for climate justice policies, no matter who people voted for. This is huge. It means that even if you have different political views, if you truly grasp how climate change affects so many other areas, you are more likely to back these justice-oriented policies. Unsurprisingly, Democrats were generally more supportive of these policies than Republicans. But what is really interesting is that the ability to think analytically also played a role. People who were more inclined to think systematically and reflectively were also more likely to support climate justice policies. This makes sense because these policies are complex. They involve weighing costs, benefits, and far-off consequences. The study really dug into this. They had participants explain their support for each policy, and they analyzed those explanations to measure how much analytic thinking was involved. They found that people who used more analytical language were more supportive of mitigation and climate justice policies. It seems that the ability to break down complex issues and articulate the reasoning behind them is a significant factor in supporting policies that require a deeper understanding of global interdependencies. So, what is the big takeaway here? It is not just about individual actions or just about scary weather reports. It is about understanding the interconnectedness of everything. Climate change isn't an isolated problem. It's a threat multiplier that can worsen existing inequalities and create new ones. By highlighting these connections to conflict, to migration, to economic stability, we can help people see the urgent need for climate justice policies, even if those policies aren't directly benefiting them at home. The researchers suggest that we need to craft messages that emphasize these spillover effects, instead of just talking about rising sea levels. We should talk about how those rising sea levels can lead to displacement and social instability. This kind of communication can shift public perception and lead to greater support for policies that promote global fairness. Now, every study has its limitations. This one focused on the US, and political polarization can vary a lot from country to country. Also, while they used a great measure for causal connectedness, it is still a psychological construct, and real-world support involves many factors. But the core idea that understanding connections matters seems really solid. Moving forward, it would be fascinating to see how these findings apply in different cultural and political contexts. Can we develop interventions that really boost that sense of causal connectedness? How can we best communicate these complex links to people who might be initially skeptical? This research gives us valuable tools and insights into how to foster a more informed and engaged public when it comes to tackling one of the biggest challenges humanity has ever faced. What do you think about these findings? Does understanding the connections make you see climate justice differently? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this explanation helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more science deep dives and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching.